Hey, it's Joe West from the West Barn with
Mike Shimshack.
And today we have drum god Todd Sucherman. Welcome.
Hi, how are you?
Greg, we're really excited to have you on. I've been watching videos of yours forever, and I'm not even a drummer, so that's a testament in and of itself. So we've got lots of questions we want to ask you about your YouTube channel and about touring with STYX and your clinics and everything that you do, and Brian Wilson and Spinal Tap. But first and foremost, I want to ask you a couple questions about that room you're sitting in that I see in all your videos, or a lot of your videos. Is that the room that you do your recordings from, like whenever you're doing remote recordings?
Yeah, I've done many records and projects and whatnot out of here. I mean, it was originally built when we moved here 15 years ago, and the idea was, the hardest thing about being a drummer is having a place to be able to play. And I wanted a place that was soundproof, that was a separate structure from the house, that I could come out here at 1 o'clock in the morning if need be and play and not bother a soul. And then, in the age of recording studios going away and everyone having their own recording studio, this turned into a recording studio. And even though it's only sort of 22 by 22 and there's a lot of foam, there's so many reflective surfaces in here that it actually sounds great. It sounds like it's a much liver room than it looks to the eye. So,
what did it used to be?
Oh, it was nothing. It was lawn behind the pool.
Okay, so built from scratch.
Right.
And I see you've got all these drums, not just snare drums, but a bunch of drums everywhere. Is that any sort of, how's the resonant tone when you're recording? Is it the whole room just humming?
No, it's very, it's dry with a little bit of reflectiveness. I mean, you can't see on this whole wall, there's, I don't know how many drum kits lined up over here. I mean, I think there's 13 drum kits in this room, with 3 set up at all times. That's the main recording one, the Pearl Masterworks. It was just serendipitous luck that the room sounds as good as it does. I mean, I could play you recordings and I could say, hey, just got back from Abbey Road, and you wouldn't bat an eye, right, at the sound.
What an interesting thing. We've been preconditioned as kids, especially our generation, that if it wasn't done in a big room with a large format console, then you weren't really making music. And now it's like, if you just let your ears, if you do the taste test with your ears, it's really tough anymore to justify, having a big console at your place and powering it up, keeping it powered on, and hiring a whole crew to come in.
Yes, at the same time, though, there's something lovely about, well, at least in the old days and when we were virus free, about going into a big room and the history that has taken place in those rooms. It often adds to the vibe. And, you got a big Neve console or something like that. It's you got the bigs, the speakers in the wall, and you're listening to music where like no one's ever going to hear it this good.
I miss that. It was like a little bit of like, hey, we built a dragster, now we get to go out to the dragster strip and show off our muscle car. It's like when you're doing it at your house, sometimes it's underwhelming in regards to the size and scale of what you feel like you're a part of.
Well, it becomes like it's your workspace. It's like if you're woodworking in your garage or something like that. It's like, this is where I do my thing, and you try to make your environment as groovy as you can. But then there's things, and this story, I was recording, this has to be 2 years ago now. I did a couple songs on Derek Small's solo record from Spinal Tap. And the late, great Ed Cherney, who just passed away in the last year, was the engineer. And that guy's done 1,000 records that everybody knows. And he said this just like it dawned on him. He wasn't boasting to me or anything, but he was miking the drums. And we were at what's now East West Studios. But he got done and he started to walk to the door that led into the control room. And he just stopped and goes, I recorded Bonnie Raitt's Nick of Time. She stood right here and sang those songs. And walked in the room, and he didn't say that any boastful way at all. It just kind of dawned on him like a memory hitting him of the million sessions that he's done. And then that left me with a cool feeling. I'm like, here, right at the end of my bass drum, that's where Bonnie Raitt stood and sang all those songs. So there is sort of the majesty of things that have happened in the past. You know, when you
I guess the question is, do you play better or worse because of that? Do you rise to the occasion and be inspired by it? Or do you
yes.
fall through like everyone thinks they're a fraud at some level? Do you sort of crumble upon yourself with the pressure?
No, for me, I don't. Recording's my favorite thing in the world to do, and I never feel more alive or more correct of what I'm supposed to be doing in the universe
Well, that's a
than when
good
I'm
point.
recording.
There's something about your playing to make a dude who's a songwriter and record producer sit down and watch hours of videos. I've got no reason to be watching drummers, right? But I watch yours, and they just to watch you play. You're one of my favorite drummers. I was talking to Jerry Goldenson the other day, and I said, I was just talking. We were watching some of your videos, and I was talking about watching you, and I was like, there's a little bit of sleight of hand, or there is like, it's like watching Circus Olay, or something that's well synchronized when you play. I've watched some of your clinical videos where you're showing what you're doing in regards to rudiments and strokes, and then you watch it at full speed. There is a hypnotic thing to watching you play. You've got such a fine control. As a record producer, when I watch you play, I say, he's hitting that drum with the perfect amount of energy, not to saturate the shell and override the whole drum kit. He plays his cymbals with the perfect dynamic so that they're powerful, but they have a nice wash and they don't oversaturate. To watch a guy play an instrument like that, it's like watching Tom Bukovac. That's why his channel is blowing up, or Tim Pierce. To watch true artists that can only play their instrument, if you can just be satisfied watching them just play alone, is truly something. You've got that.
Well, thank you. I mean, the interesting thing about, drums in particular is everyone has their own heartbeat, and the way that they hit a drum, the attitude, the intent, the sound they're trying to pull out. And, I'm just trying to play what I like to hear. It's kind of that simple. And I let my ears dictate, the dynamics or what I'm trying to accomplish. And it's always a constant, not battle, but it's a constant pursuit to try to please myself, and I'm sort of cursed with that. I often don't. So that keeps me going. That's one of the things that keeps me going, is because I'm not saying this, oh, poor Todd. I'm very often dissatisfied with myself. So that keeps me going, that when there are the moments that I'm playing where I'm like, yes, that's exactly how I wanted it to sound or to feel or whatever. Those are, pat yourself on the back. And those are the delicious moments or the drug rather, that keeps me coming back to this. But it's if it were easy, everyone could do it. And for me, it is, as long as I've been doing this instrument, it's still all hands on deck when I play.
Well, you can tell that you've made the decision to sound like yourself. Like, you have a signature sound that is not like, drums are one of those instrument groups where people can get lost in the mix. And it's just like, well, who's playing that? Well, who knows who's playing it? It's 2/4 groove over a rock thing. But there's certain guys, whenever they play, like Near Z or Steve Smith, or Caliuta, when you hear these guys play, you can almost say, like, that's Omar Hakim. That's who that person is. And I think it's important because it even happens in our world of songwriting and record producing. It's like you have to make a decision to lean into who you are as an artist, not to just like do the thing, which is like chasing all the people that you grew up trying to be. There's an eventual point where you find out who you are. And then once you lean into that, you can really get into some special stuff. And it's very tough in drums to be able to be so signature, but you're one of those guys that when you play, you say, I bet you that's that dude.
Well,
is that a conscious effort?
Thank you. Well, I mean, everyone wants to, finding your own voice on the instrument, on whatever instrument you play, is an incredibly tough thing to do. And if you're lucky to find your voice, you kind of have to follow what your ears and your intuition and your heart tells you to play. We're also in the service industry as drummers when we're hired to play for people. So if someone says, oh, can you play a crash in the middle of the verse? That might go against what I want to do, but this guy's paying me. So here you go. Here's a crash in the middle of the verse. hey, could you put, some tape on the floor toms? They're too ringy. Okay. I've never been one of these guys where it's, no, man, that's not my sound. You hired me for me, then the guy's not going to hire me again.
Yeah.
I'm in the service industry. You want the bottom heads off, whatever you want. That's how I've always sort of conducted my business. I want to make the artist and the producer happy. So that's what I go for. And then if any of my personality or ideas or thumbprint or whatever you want to call it ends up in the music, then that's great. That makes certain things and certain projects musically satisfying, and then makes other things be, like it was a little bit of a chore, but we got it done and they were happy. So cool.
Well, there's a perfect blend of that too. It's like, okay, me as a producer, I hired Todd to come in and play on a record, let's say. Well, there better be a reason why I hired you to come in to play on it. And if I have any brains in my head, I'm going to try to give you a wide berth to be you rather than turn you into a TR-707. It's like the concept is...
Yeah, I wish more people had your attitude.
Well, I think it's an attitude. That's a great point. I think it's an attitude that I've developed over the years by learning that I was squeezing some of the potential out of the record. And then whenever I moved to Nashville from New York City, I started to see these great guys bringing so much to the record that I was realizing, wait a minute, I could still get my ideas in there and make sure I oversee the record. But these guys are bringing something super special that I don't have. And why don't you at least hear what they're saying to say no to it eventually?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, as creating music, there's a million ways to go about a million different things. And one great experience that I had, I did this record, and I'm not making fun of him at all because he's become a dear friend, and I think he's a genius, and I love him. But there's an artist out of Germany who goes by the name of Finally George. And I played on this record, gosh, it's probably 2 or 3 years ago now. And it was one of the greatest records I've ever done. And some of the work that I personally, I think some of my best work. To use the words of Dave Maddox, with music that good, all I can do is not screw it up.
Yeah.
But my first session for him, he's out of Hamburg, Germany. And the first song we did, the whole big part of the song was I want to say it was in 11/8. And he did something with his drum machine program that I thought was very machiney programmed. It wasn't natural the way a drummer would do it. And so I did that very first track, send it to him, and we're having a FaceTime, and he's looking at me and he goes, "You opened the hi-hat on the end of 11, and I had the hi-hat open on 11." And I thought, oh, geez, this is like a 7-minute song, he's going to do a whole record. But, I explained to him, I said, well, that is not a very natural thing that a drummer would play, certainly not me. I thought that had a nice forward motion, and it kept it moving in a nice shape to the next bar. And he just went, okay. But a trust and a thing, developed from there. And I mean, it's like I said, it's one of my favorite records I've ever done, and every track on there is just it's a beautiful painting.
Oh, that's great.
But that's it could go, hey, do whatever you want, to, oh my goodness, he wants me to play exactly like what he programmed.
Well, and here's me and Mike, in multiple session musicians, have had this conversation on the program. When someone does that to you, not intentionally, but do you find yourself just sort of ratcheting down into reading mode when someone's talking about the of a placement of a hit? Do you go into this mode where your creative brain turns off and your lizard playing rudiment brain turns on?
If it gets to the point where it's kind of a bummer, it's just whatever you want. I'll give you whatever you want, right. and let's bring the ball into the end zone.
And that's not the best. That's not the best you have to offer, I would argue. I think that too.
But sometimes you have to realize that when you're recording some music for some people that has existed in a demo form for sometimes up to multiple years.
You're right.
If they hear anything that's not with their programmed drums or the drummer that, I'm replacing, if they hear anything different, if the snare drum sounds different, if the hi-hats are a different color, it sounds crazy to them. Their ears perk up.
You're right.
Wait, what's wrong? What's wrong? What's wrong? And it turns into this whole, they have severe demoitis. And now they've been looking at the Eiffel Tower and it's been green, and now the Eiffel Tower is orange, and they can't friggin' handle it.
I get you, and I've been guilty of that as a younger kid. The difference is that there's no winning in that scenario because the producer wants what the producer wants. But in the reality, that 10 to 15 years later, if he sticks with it long enough, he's going to realize that it wasn't in the best interest of the song. That in the moment. He doesn't know that.
Boy. It's really hard to say, but in the moment, all I can think about is in the moment is how do we make this the best it could possibly be, and also please whoever's hiring me, and not only achieve their vision, but hopefully surpass it. Give them some things where they thought, geez, I never thought this would be this cool, or that's such a great idea. And then there's situations where like Brian Wilson has just shocked me a couple times, where he's suggested things that I never would have thought of in 1,000 lifetimes of being a session musician, where he'd ask me to do something and I would think, that's the dumbest shit I've ever heard. Why would I do that? And then, okay.
Then you play it, and then you're like, what?
And it becomes a thing. And it's happened multiple times. And every time I go, why do I doubt this guy that,
Right.
changed the face of 20th century music, repeatedly? And then he'll come up with some idea. One in particular, he actually cites this in his autobiography when we were doing the Gershwin record, where the Gershwin family had given him 2 unfinished pieces to finish and then reimagine a whole bunch of famous Gershwin works. We're doing I Loves You, Porgy, and it's sort of traditional brushes, swing time, lovely, like you're playing at a wedding or something like that. And then he's like, okay, at bar 47, I want the whole band to stop, and Todd, pull out the sticks, both floor toms, bam, 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 4 quarter notes as loud as you can. What? Yeah, okay. So, all right, and do that. And wouldn't you know that down the road, as that piece, because he was just coloring in real time with suggestions, painting a picture. And the whole band stops, and there are these 4 hits, and then they overdubbed a cymbal swell and an orchestra into a key change. And it might be the coolest moment on the whole record.
Wow.
Yeah.
And I thought he'd lost his mind right there at that point.
You had to know, though, because of his reputation. It's like you hear all these stories about him. If you ever tried to pick up a guitar and play God Only Knows, it's one of those songs that if you listen to the chords of that song, you're like, it makes no sense. It is not, you will never sit by a campfire and pick your way through that. Like, oh yeah, I'm pretty good at that. Like, listen to the chords in that song. That guy's brain is just, it doesn't work like mine. It doesn't work like anyone I've ever, like, I watched the documentary and listened to the music, and it just is, man, it's a special thing, to the point where it's like, he must have some, and I know he does have some severe life impacts because of the way, his genius, but what a...
Yeah. You can't be that level of genius and not, have peculiar things, But I've seen him dole out harmony parts on original pieces, starting from the bottom up and just working from the low notes to the high notes, and it goes from sounding like someone moaning in a nursing home to, the sun poking out of the clouds when it's all put together, and just doing that like 4 bars at a time, doling out the parts. And that's just in his head. It's really is.
Wow. How did that come about? How did you come about to work with Brian Wilson? That's pretty crazy.
I had done a bunch of work for a guy named Joe Thomas in Chicago, who ran a recording studio. And he ended up years later producing Brian. And for a while, Joe was caught up in hiring a lot of Nashville guys, and he left all of Chicago guys that helped build his business up, and left us in the dirt. And then he had a bunch of Nashville guys play on most of the Imagination record. And then even though I'd moved to Los Angeles at the time, I was still kind of going back and doing some work in Chicago. And Joe called me to play on a couple songs for Brian for the Imagination record. And then he was the original MD of the band that became the main nucleus, or certainly there's been a lot of changes over the last 20 some years with that band, but there's been a lot of constants and people going in and out. But that was the first version of what would be the Brian Wilson band. So he asked me to do the first tour, the first two little legs of Brian's first ever solo tour in '99, and then STYX picked back up again. STYX was on hiatus for a year and did a record, and I was just kind of living in Los Angeles and doing sessions and whatever weird gigs that came my way, and Brian was one of them. So that's how my relationship started. And I think I've done or appeared on 5 or 6 of his records.
Wow. Is that intimidating for you, like to first meet him and then like the first time you're going to join into a groove? And I mean, it's like something so well, even after doing it so many years, but to be doing it with a legend like that.
No, because it's the task at hand. I mean, there's time to reflect on it later and go, gee, that was really cool, or wow, that really happened. But at the time, I'm there to be a professional and do my job. And I never like screwed something up in any situation going like, wow, I can't believe, I'm there to do a job. I got to play. Here's the drums. What's the song? I'm thinking, all the gears are shifting. And just the general things about being a session musician, just like knowing when to talk, when to not speak, when to shut up. If you have a question about something, you're unsure, ask the question before you start playing. And it just, you kind of kick into professional mode and let's make music, and the music's fun. And then later there's time to go, I can't believe that happened.
Yeah.
So crazy.
Yeah, I mean, the Brian Wilson thing is like, it's up there. It's above and beyond the normal. We're all programmed that when someone walks in the room to like just metabolize it. But that'd be a tough one for me, to just be distracted, because you're going between like that work brain where you're so focused on the music. And then it's like you're going back to like, hey, your 14-year-old brain that was just leaning over those records and so fascinated. So it's hard to keep, like I would have a little ADD. I'd be shooting between my modern professional self and that kid that was, spinning around those records, looking at every name on the insert,
Yeah, I mean, I remember sitting at the piano with my 2 older brothers and singing In My Room. And like now I'm playing that song with the guy. It's pretty crazy, and the same thing with STYX. I saw STYX 3 times as a kid growing up, and then to play with those guys. So, anything that's happened to me has been, just a lovely surprise and just an amazing thing. And there's always some sort of link to childhood or growing up. Where I've always been like the youngest kid in the band, and that continues to be the case here at the age of 51. But
well, that's a great segue, because there's probably not a better band on the planet for you to seamlessly fit into than STYX. Me and Mike are both big fans. Everybody's a big fan of STYX, right?
Oh.
So it's like you're a really great drummer for those guys. For those guys to find you had to be like a needle in a haystack. And, someone could have jumped in there and just taken away all the nuance of those records. And when you play, I was just watching a clip the other night, and I think it was Paradise, where you're doing the ride thing. There was 2 songs where you played them together. I wish I could remember, but it was one of those things when you played the ride cymbal live, just the nuance of the ride to me was just like, it was exactly as I remembered the record feeling. It's like when you listen to those old records, you do get demoitis, you get recorditis of these things. And to have a guy on the road that can play that amount of nuance, really, for me, it was like, it paid off when I listened to it.
How'd you get connected to them?
Well, by doing every gig, by playing everything and saying yes to as many things, growing up, I ended up in the recording session world in Chicago, which was largely jingles. There was, record work and whatnot, but the top guys were doing jingles, and they were working, just about every day. And that's what I wanted to do. And it took a while to break into that, but I finally did. And the guy who took care of the cartage for all the musicians that were working was a guy named Keith Marks, and he had like the cartage company in Chicago. So we became friends. I mean, he had a key to my place, and he would come at 6 o'clock in the morning, and I would stack up what I'd need for the following day's session. He'd come, he'd haul it out, set it up at the studio. I'd walk in and play, get done, sign the form. He or one of his guys would tear down the kit and bring it right back to my place. So we did that for a number of years. And Keith had worked with the band in the past. He'd worked with a couple of guys on their solo records. And in 1995, A&M Records wanted to put out the definitive greatest hits. Well, Lady was on Wooden Nickel Records, their first big hit. And I guess there was some issue about them getting the original sound recording for A&M. I don't know what that was all about, but they decided, well, let's just re-record it. And they call it Lady 95. And apparently at that time, John Panazzo was in ill health and couldn't really physically play the drums. So they called Keith Marks and they said, who should we get? So he recommended me for the session. So I went in and had to ghost drum for John, sign a non-disclosure, one-time payment, and do that recording. And then left, 90 minutes. Hey, nice to meet you guys. I saw you guys, blah, 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 blah. See you later. Boom, in and out. And then they called me back again in February of 96 to play on a original song called Little Susie. And that was a very active drum part, and I could see they were getting very, very excited at what I was playing. And not that they weren't nice the first time, but there was much more of a get-to-know-you hang. And, hey, so where'd you grow up? And da-da-da-da-da. And I could tell that they were sizing me up as a human being, because obviously if you're going to invite someone to the party, if I was a weirdo or wacko or whatever, it would have been over. So they had to feel that I could blend in as a human being. And in my memory anyways, like the next day or 2 days later, James Young, JY, phoned me up and said, what are you doing this summer? So that's how that came about.
Yeah. And it's been 20 years?
Sort of 25 since the first recording.
Wow. So you've been in it longer now than anyone as a drummer.
I think
probably more time with you than
with
John.
John's been playing with his brother Chuck and Dennis going back to like 1964 or something like that. So I mean, if you want to extend the band to childhood, I mean that's going to be a hard one to say. I've been in the band longer than All
right. So one question I want to ask you, and I don't know if you've addressed this at all. When I watch the videos of you on stage, it looks like a GoPro. And I'm sure you're wearing in-ears, but you can always hear the drums are super prominent. Is what we're hearing from the remnant of the song that we're hearing, is it just from a side fill monitor?
No, it's a Zoom Q2N, which I don't even really see. I got one set up right there.
But when we hear that little bit of band, where's that band coming from? Is there a side-filled speaker next to you?
No, there's a dedicated line into the Zoom from the monitor board.
Oh.
And I have the drums, cranked up tremendously, much louder than the music. Because the reason I started doing that was not for glorification on the internet. I would watch the show the next day, and it's a laborious thing to do, but it always has to be from the night before, because then I can remember exactly how everything felt, and I could comb through it, scan through it. Yes, that's sloppy. Yes, that feels on top. And then the next night, make the adjustments and watch it. And I have no interest.
No, wait a minute. You're still doing this 20 years later? That's still your process?
Absolutely.
Oh my!
Absolutely.
Dude, you got the gig.
No, but I want to play. I don't want to sit back and.
I know.
You know what I mean? I don't. I got
That's not normal, by the way.
Have it suck. Well, I want to keep it. I feel like I keep wanting to get better. I want to get better at playing this stuff. So I'll sit there, and it sucks. I'd rather listen to other music in the day, or go for a walk or something like that. But that's part of my job is to deliver the best performance that I can. And the only way you can do that is by being in touch with what you sounded like. And I have no interest in 3-4 gigs ago. That's gone.
Right.
It's always the night before because I can remember that. And then listen, and then watch again. Make the adjustments. Yeah, good. Yes, good. That's better. That feels sluggish here for some reason, and I make those adjustments. And I don't record every single show, but I'll record, I'll record 4 or 5 out of 10 shows.
Well, I love the way you do it because it's just enough to know exactly where you are in the song, but you get to hear every nuance of the drum kit.
Another reason why the drums are that loud is A, I'm listening for myself. B, if I do find 58 seconds that doesn't make me want to kill myself, and I'm like, that's exactly how I wanted it, and I'll post that. Now, I don't know if anyone else in the band, if they're feeling that they had a crappy night. I don't know because I'm in a hotel room at 2 o'clock in the morning, and I didn't see them since the night before, since we all went to bed on the bus, and I won't see them until we're going to the gig. So that's when I would go, I like this, I'm going to post it. But I don't want someone coming to me going, why did you post Blue Collar Man last night? I was like, I had no voice, or I was having a problem. I don't know what other mental mishigas that anyone's going through at a time, and I don't want to ruffle anyone's feathers, certainly not any of my superiors. So that's why the music is back. You can hear, if you know the songs, you know where you are. But that why I'm not putting out a record mix because that's not my job to do that.
Yeah, well, it's really
my place rather.
I find myself watching that stuff probably the most. There was a Drumeo thing that was like a day in the life for you that I watched, which was great. You could tell the guys really love you and that the band dynamic is pretty healthy for being around so long. You guys have figured that out, how to like not hate each other. But I think my favorite is watching those. Is it a little GoPro? What do you use to tape? Or is it a Zoom recorder?
It's a Zoom
right.
Q1, yeah.
But the image is great. It's like, this is a little master class in a song that's super relevant that I know, and I get to watch, the nuance of how he does it. It's like an unnarrated master class. So they're really fun to watch. Those are probably my favorite. Do you find they're the most popular ones that you post, or what is the...
Yeah, I have no clue what is going to be, garner likes or comments or whatever. There are certain things I thought, well, this is going to make a little bit of noise, and then it doesn't, and then something that I put up just because, well, I think this is kind of neat, and then that blows up for some reason. And I don't do it for that. When I started recording the shows that way, I was very surprised at how popular it became, and people kept saying, "Oh, please keep doing this. Please keep doing this." So I thought, okay, if I can find a minute here or there that I don't dislike, I'll put that up there, and it is what it is. It's nice. It's nice they enjoy it.
Yeah, anybody watching should watch those videos. I've watched. It's funny. That's when Joe told me you're going to be on the show, I was like, oh my God, I love this guy's videos. I totally independently watched the videos myself too. They're incredible.
You've got a command of maybe for lack of a better drumming word, subdivisions. It's like all the beats that aren't on the beat. Like there's such a fluidity in the way you play, and at speed, they're almost, you can't do anything else other than feel them rather than see them because they're so going by so quickly. But, yeah, man, it's just there's such a thing. Your performances are so exact, but they've got more heart and soul. My complaint with drummers is once you get to a Dave Weckl status of being clinical, that sometimes I don't believe you anymore, right? I don't feel it anymore. But your performances have a great pocket, have an incredible feel, but are so incredibly precise that it's like not human, which I don't find in hardly anyone.
Dave's one of my favorites. I mean, I think he's unbelievable. And like any musician that's had a career that long, there's been different eras and phases of him. But, to me, it's music, and that's an emotional thing. So I try to attach myself to the song and what the song is saying, and that's the focal point is the singer. So drums are a supportive role, and that has to somehow fit in the overall storytelling of the song. Otherwise, it's I'm putting my ego before the composition. So, I talk about this in master classes and clinics, and for anyone that's interested, that like when I'm recording a piece of music, if you hire me to play in your song, I want to know what the lyrics are. If it's a song that has lyrics, what's the song saying? Is it a happy song? Is it a sad song? And then and only then can I emotionally attach myself to the piece of music. Otherwise, music is just a series of numbers. 8 bars, get loud in the chorus, come down. And to me, music is more than that. I want to, if the guy's got a broken heart, I want to have a broken heart too, and play like that.
Yeah, I read on your website for the hire me section, or work with me section. I appreciated what you had put in your explanation of how you want to work with people, the process, like how it's not just, dude, how much to play on my track, right? It is like, hey, what's happening here? Let me know let's see if we're a good fit. Let's see if I can bring something to your music, and then let's do it this way. It was thoughtful because you have respect for the music. You expect the people that hire you to have respect for the music. And sometimes when you open the floodgates to the internet, people just they haven't had time to learn that yet, maybe the protocol. So I thought that was an interesting philosophy you had in regards to working with people.
Well, it's, there's a whole culture of people not knowing how to write to someone correctly and how to address, how to communicate. I would never send someone my playing in hopes that, hey, maybe this guy will help me, and just go like, yo, check out my shit. Or send a clip of them playing with no like, hi, Todd, my name is Billy, and I'm from Springfield, Missouri. Like, okay, if you write me like a human being, I will write you back, but just don't send things. And I'm sent like 40 to 60, whatever music links a day. Like, my job could be just watching other drummers and critiquing people's music and ignoring my family. The amount of stuff I've sent, and I can't do that. And I try to write most people back if they write me like a normal human being, but just sending links with no explanation, like, that's a very weird thing. Sorry, I went down a weird rabbit hole here, but
No, I think that's, doing music is an intimate, if it's done well, it should be like a relationship, and you should treat it with the same cordiality as you would a relationship.
I guess my point is getting a Facebook message like, how much to play on my track? Like, what? How am I supposed to answer that?
Yeah, it's very much leave the money on the dresser as you leave.
Well, but it's also, I know that anyone with any sort of professionalism or any musicality would not write me like that.
Right.
They just want to know. They're curious, and I'm not in the business of satisfying curiosity.
Yeah. Well, and if they don't know enough, like for me, it's like I'm going to find something to hire you for. Right? Personally, this is my objective for the next year. Find something to hire you for. But there's something that goes before it, which is like, I know this guy. I know what he has. I love what he does. And I'd love to get a little bit of that on what I do. Right? So it's like, there's a little bit of like, at least it's like, hey, I'm a big fan. Thank you so much for, returning my call. And it's like, I'm going to send you out some music. I want to see what you think about it. If you think like it's something we can maybe work on together. And then it's like, there's a little bit of like, it goes slowly if you're going to have a mutual respect and a positive experience where people bring their A game. I want you to bring your A game, but I'm not going to bring your A game by sort of barking at you and just sort of, doing that internet thing.
Another funny thing is people always try to wait until they have some sort of STYX type song. Like, what my favorite thing to do is? Like playing like a James Taylor type song where there's almost nothing, like shaker and a side stick. Those are, I could pick out my favorite recordings, and they're going to be more like that than there's going to be blistering tom work down. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or just some of my favorite things are like, I played that with the exact attitude and everything it's exactly how I wanted it. And those are the things I'm more proud of than the choppy and double bass and let's wait till we have a song for the drum solo. I'm not always interested in doing that. I'm interested in doing other musical things that are not what I'm doing most of my time with STYX.
You're the equivalent of like a hot girl that says my eyes are up here. It's like you're known for being like this, gonzo drummer that's like really precise, and people want to see you do that. They want to give the monkey a banana to do a trick. And it's like there's a part of you that still is, that's a large part of who you are because it's incredible and it's fun. But there's still that part of you that's like, man, I just want to be in the pocket and do this James Taylor record that's not maybe totally, what I'm known for.
Well, it's funny. I think that was a subconscious byproduct of how my record that just came out a couple months ago came to be. It was more of a singer-songwriter, like English rock band record with very simple drumming, because that's my favorite thing to do, actually. The whole becoming a singer on it was a whole separate issue, but the playing.
You sang on it too?
Oh yeah.
Oh, great.
Yeah, I mean, I assume that everyone would have thought that my record would be some sort of drum-centric fusion thing where I'm playing, solos in between kicks and everything's in 13 and 7. But it's the record that, long story short, J.K. Harrison, an old buddy of mine from the old days, had been haranguing and harassing me about doing a record with him and having me be a singer for years. And I always blew him off saying, gee, it's cute that you think that I could do that, but I didn't feel that I had the goods to actually do it. And he kept on me. And my wife said something one night. We were listening to this Elbow song called Kindling from Little Fictions. And she just said, and she spent 12 years singing in Brian Wilson's band. She said, well, if you ever do anything, you should cover this. You'd sound great on this. And that all happened at the same time in a convergence where I was going to be spending a week in Los Angeles with a lot of free time. There were some free afternoons and some free evenings. And I thought, okay, I'll get together with JK. At the very least, we'll have a few drinks and we'll have a bunch of laughs. And by the second day, we wrote the song Last Flight Home back and forth in like 30 minutes. And it was like, okay, something's happening here. There's absolute electricity. And let me just get out of my own way and see where this naturally and organically unfolds. Long story short, again, the music is very much, if you like sophisticated pop, if you like Elbow and Jellyfish and XTC and Crowded House, things like that, you might like this record because it's all melodies. I don't give a shit about any music that doesn't have a melody. I don't care. And it was important for me to have every song have just great melodies and a performance that I could stand behind and put my name on it. So drumming to my own singing was a colossal experience because the drummer in me had planned. I thought, oh, this might be nice to do, or this would be cool here, a little clever bit here. But when I went to do the drums, which actually I did the vocals first, and when I went to do the drums, I had to simplify a bunch of things because it distracted from the main point of the song. It was like, okay, there's in-between vocal lines here, and let's do a little clever bit back here on the drums, and then come back to, now we're back from the commercial. I didn't want to go to the commercial. I wanted that to be a seamless vibe, and it really made me think about how, even though I always think I'm trying to attach myself to the piece of music, don't think so dramatically at some points. And sometimes no fill or that's all you need. You don't need to add you don't need to add a flam and a little a 6-stroke roll in the middle of something to make it cool. The space in between those fills, that works, and the space that's in between them dictates of how something's going to feel, and now it feels like a truck going down the highway, and instead of a bunch of little jackrabbits running across the road.
So does this mean that you're going to be doing more records? I mean, it took you 51 years to do your first.
So I'll be 102 when the next one comes out. Dude, I don't know, because a year and a half ago, I wouldn't have imagined that this would have even come into existence. If you would have said to
Right.
me a year and a half ago, like, "Hey, you're about to do a record and you're going to be singing," I would have, what? That would have been as insane as like, "Hey, you're going to be on some sort of space shuttle and you're going to go to the space station." What? It would have been that insane. The way it came about, so quickly and organically, to the point where I didn't believe it was actually going to happen until we were mixing and mastering. I didn't even tell my mom I was doing a record. There's part of me that I didn't believe I was going to see it through.
How many songs are on it?
600. No,
You had to make up for a lot of time.
there's 10 songs. There's 9 originals and a cover of "Kindling" by Elbow. That kind of was the genesis of it, at least from having a few glasses of wine with my wife when she just happened to say that, and I thought that was a very peculiar thing for her to say.
And did you produce?
Yeah,
Nice.
yeah. JK and I did the record together.
That's a really tough thing to
There's
do
a
as a
couple-
drummer, to come out of that behind the kit and then be like, it's kind of like you add so much as a drummer that you almost rely on the singer and the songwriter to add that fuel that you're not bringing. And so now you're filling 2 roles. It's got to be a little bit of self-questioning and,
It was terrifying. It was terrifying because it was complete, uncharted, dark, murky waters for me on so many levels. But as much as it terrified me, I also found that enticing and exciting. That was more interesting to me at that time than playing on, trying to create a fusion record that 13 people would like. And I had just played a couple of really great instrumental records, so that itch had been scratched for a while. The San Nico record and the Antoine Fafard record, which is that's a fusion masterpiece in my opinion. I mean, his writing is incredible. But when it comes down to it, I've always been drawn to melody and lyrics and songs, and that's what I wanted to do. It was a convergence of all these things that happened just at the right time. And if any one of those elements had not happened at that time, it never would have happened.
So you're in Austin now. Have you spent a lot of time in Nashville making records? Is that something that, I know you said LA and Chicago?
No, my only Nashville experience of recording was we recorded The Mission there, the STYX record that came out a couple of years ago. We did that at Blackbird.
Blackbird. Yeah, Tommy lives up the road from me. I was going to build on the same road he's on. I've always been a huge fan of him. He's one of these dudes that it's like he's got a little Paul McCartney to him. It's like when he writes, there's some really special melodies. He's got a great voice. He's a great player.
The amazing thing about Tommy is that, if he's 65 now or something.
Oh, wow.
He's never sounded better. His voice, like as a singer, some guys, they get older and they become a ghost of their former selves. He's never sounded better, and he's never been playing better. So that's inspiring to me, because that's what I aspired to do.
Sure.
So to keep getting better. And that's exactly what he does. His
And
voice,
to sing that high, that's usually the problem when you get older, is being able to pull off the original keys of songs when you were 20.
He's in the original key, and he's just a natural, and he's cool. Even if you didn't like STYX, you'd be like, I don't like STYX, but that guy's cool. You know what I mean? He has that sort of thing, and he has a charisma that is just natural. I mean, you could, he's been one of my dear friends, but if you saw that guy sitting at Starbucks in a pair of shorts and a white T-shirt, you'd go, that guy's someone. I don't know who he is, but that guy's someone, because he's got this charisma that just shines like he's a star. There's no two ways about it.
Yeah. Well, you talk about melodies and playing. I would think like, man, this guy needs to get to Nashville more. I know we have our pitfalls with falling into the same kind of sounding music, but there's so many great songs in this town. And the ones you hear aren't all the ones that there are. There's that dig down to the second tier and find some artists that you love. They're maybe not having the light shown on them quite as much. But if you love melody and great songs, there's some great, you'd be well served to start looking at Nashville a little harder, finding some people to collaborate with.
It's they can find me. It's kind of a weird story. I had actually considered maybe moving to Nashville a couple years ago, but I've had a bunch of freaky things happen to me when I'm in Nashville. And it's almost like the town is saying, do not move here. I could get into it, but it's going to be a little weird and almost supernatural. But
That's all right.
It's
Give us one. Give us one abridged version.
okay. Well, I said the time that I'd lined up with a realtor, I'm going to go check out some houses. Is when we did 3 shows at Schermerhorn with the with the Nashville Symphony. And then there was a massive ice storm, and the whole town was shut down. Which the very first time I was ever in Nashville, I think, was '94. I played the Bluebird Cafe with a singer-songwriter, a guy named Steve Colander. Same thing happened. Ice storm, just completely shut down. So, couldn't go anywhere. The hotel staff, there's like no room service. Couldn't do anything. Broke my toe in the middle of the night. Lawrence went down, almost broke his knee in the ice outside of Schermerhorn. All 3 shows were sold out, and we played to quarter and half houses because people couldn't leave their houses or were afraid to. One of the nights, the symphony canceled on us, and of course, couldn't drive out, down to Franklin and Brentwood or whatever to look at houses because all the roads were closed. That was just one example of like another 6 or 7 stories I could tell you of people dying, things getting canceled, plans getting foiled, things not coming to fruition that I traveled there to do. It's kind of weird. So I'm
the universe. Telling you.
Nashville and I have a very, very peculiar relationship.
Well, we love you. We're big fans. We want to thank you for coming on and telling us a bunch of great stories. I want to ask you one question. I don't know anything about this, but I would have to imagine that the sticks that you use are not that heavy watching you play. I know that you tape your hands all up. You look like, a boxer when you're about to play, which, I don't know if...
Putting the foil on.
Yeah, it just looks like, like you've got leprosy with all these Band-Aids on. But are the sticks light, medium? What?
That's a very interesting observation you have. Yes, they are. It's a thick, chunky 5B size, but my sticks that are my signature sticks, Todd Sucherman 330Ws from ProMark, maple is the material. And most drumsticks are made out of hickory or oak, which are heavier, denser woods. But the thing I like about maple is I can get a thick stick that fills out the hand, so there's something to grab onto, but it's light. So, if you're ever air drumming, it kind of feels like that. There's a sense of weightlessness to the stick, and they don't shred the way hickory does, and the tips don't chip. They just, here's this one that snapped. When it's their time to go, they just snap in half. Boom, and you grab another one. So there's a lot of attributes that maple has that I really like. And I also like the sound of maple on a ride cymbal, especially jazz ride cymbals. It has a really nice organic sound, and it's got a cushion with a nice ta behind it on the cymbal. So that's a very interesting observation for a non-drummer.
Well, I'm just like, he cannot be using sticks that I have at my studio. You look at that and you say, that guy, that's a lot of inertia going around that kit. So,
but again, I'm trying to pull a sound out of the drums and out of the cymbals. And drums and cymbals are only going to get so loud, and then you're just creating a sound pressure force. Right. And you're not hearing the tone. You can turn 18 and 20-inch crash cymbals into splashes if you're beating the hell out of the drums. They don't sound like over the bar line. They're just a wisp now.
Right.
And the toms sound like you just mic'd up the leather couch and you hit that and that's it. But there's no tone to it. If you're bashing the drums into the floor, I can play hard with force, but there's a strike about pulling the sound out of the drums that I try to do, because it's a sound. I'm making a sound here. I want it to sound good, not just loud.
I said that earlier. Yeah, it's like I can tell that as a producer, when you hit that drum, it's like I feel like you're not oversaturating it. You could tell that you know how to make them speak. I've watched so many people beat the crap out of acoustic guitars and drums to the point where they don't have the original body and tone. They get smaller. Rather than getting bigger, they get smaller. It's a weird thing.
Absolutely. The drums can sound so much bigger playing them just right, kind of with a medium density, especially in the studio. The louder you play, the smaller you're going to make the drums in the studio. And yeah, I've said that before, and then I always get wise guys like, what about Dave Grohl? It works for Dave Grohl. I love Dave Grohl. I never wanted his sound. I don't want to sound like him unless you're paying me to sound like him. Then I'll do it. But that's not the sound that I'm going after. And when I think of, in my opinion, what are great sounding drums, those aren't the first things I think of. So it is what it is. It works for him, fine. But again, that's not a sound that I'm going for. That's a sound pressure sound to me. That's
pressure sound. Sound pressure sound. I'm trying to imagine what that is. Is you talking about an overly compressed sound?
I'm talking about
saturated sound.
Okay, you're at a live show, and the drummer's hitting the drums so loud that there's a sound pressure sound. It's,
I know, I get it.
and the high tom sounds like the low tom because everything's just instead.
Yeah, I got you.
It's not that. It's just a cannon, but not a good. Oh, those drums sound like cannons, but not a good cannon. It's just loud. It's just loud. It created a sound pressure, something that your ear heard that.
Like most kick drums and most live in situations, which is just like all under 40 hertz, just like you're assaulted by the sound. I get it.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. Another quick question. How many snare drums do you own?
In this room, I think there's 114 in here.
I saw on your website you have like different Excel documents or different categories, like snares. You have like 5 or 6 links to all of your snares. It seems like you may have a problem.
Yeah, I do, but it's a great problem, and it's not about the amassing the amount of drums. I mean, everyone has their things that make their heartbeat. Mine has to do with particular makes, particular materials, friendships that I've developed over the years with various boutique snare drum builders. I'm not interested in collecting all the Slingerland Gene Krupa models and every wrap finish they ever made. I mean, that's someone else's thing,
Right.
So it's not the quantity, it's there's not a dog in this collection, and any dogs that I've had, they've been sold out the door. So they're all beautiful, unique instruments to me, and I like to think that I know them intimately, and so when a track comes my way, I'll think about what am I hearing on this piece of music, and then I'll start looking around the room and going, yeah, you over here, you this one, and I'll normally nail it, if not the first time, definitely by the second time. There's been some times where, well, this is just not right. It's not what I wanted to hear, and it's no fault of the drum. It just didn't match the music, and that's a big thing. If the snare's not happening, your track's not happening. It goes a long way to making the personality of what this piece of music. And if you look at every song like its own movie, like its own feature film, that has to have a vibe. So I know I have more drums than is necessary. But,
you think?
But
that sounds like an AA meeting conversation or an intervention. It's like, I know I have more drums that are necessary.
If you look around the room, see there's got a little jazz kit there. That was my father's. I got this
that's cool.
ridiculous Phil Collins, Keith Moon, 1978
concert toms. Yeah.
That's all the pearls back there, and then I got all the sonars and the DW that Dean Castronovo gave me back there. So, but with the snares and cymbals, if I come out here and for whatever reason I'm not feeling it, or I'm feeling like this sucks, and I'm just playing things I could already play, I'm uninspired, I change out the ride cymbal, or change out the hi-hats, or change out the snare drum, and all of a sudden there's a whole new vibe. Or I get on the jazz kit, or I get on the big kit, and it'll make me think in a different way.
Oh, wow, yeah.
We'll pull out different sounds, and if I come out here and I'm not inspired, just put a bullet in my head, because there's nothing that's ever going to inspire me if I don't come out here and go, oh, I haven't played you in a while. It's, and pull that out, and all of a sudden
that's an interesting mechanism as a creator to know, like, hey, whenever I'm lacking inspiration, you've got a couple of methods in which you can maybe change the outcome. You can say, hey, I can get inspired if I put a piccolo snare on, or if I put this ride cymbal on. It's going to have me experiencing something different to have another opinion about. You know how to get out of it.
Well, it'd be like you're picking up like an old Martin, and then you got a Les Paul. You're going to play different ideas. Yeah. You're going to start to compose, or just start to randomly go down to your root or whatever it is to start playing something. Go, oh, that sounds nice, and you'll play something on a Les Paul that you wouldn't have played on the Martin.
Yeah,
same thing here.
It's a brilliant tactic. When you guys make records, you say you're doing 14 songs in 3 days and whatnot. Are you guys just recording drum and bass, just drums? Or are you doing the whole band together?
I like doing just drums with in that scenario.
You've got to really know the songs then.
Are there guide tracks that you're playing to?
Yeah, there are pretty Technicolor demos. So I'm just recording to the demos that they will go replace everything. But they're really good Technicolor demos. And it's like playing along with the band, and everything's in perfect time, and then everyone can go play to me, and it can start having a little bit of the more of a natural thing, so everything's not like that.
Yeah, I would imagine with your being so concerned about the song and playing to the song, you're not just playing to a click track. You've really studied these demos. You know every opportunity. You know where things are happening. So when you're playing, and that's an art to be able to do that without hearing the other people, like playing to a click, you're knowing like what you're playing around. I imagine that's what you've got to do, just hearing you talk about the way you approach music.
Well, again, yeah, it could be everything from a scratch acoustic guitar in a session to a full I'm the last guy to be recorded, and I like having that big picture of being the last guy, or at least having a really Technicolor demo to work with, because then my choices are going to be more well informed. If I just have an acoustic guitar track, I might play something or not play something. You know what I mean? I get to finish piece of music like, well, shit, if I knew all that was going to be there, I wouldn't have done that, or I would have done this. So then it just turns into a guessing game of, okay, I'm blindfolded, and let's see how close to a bullseye I can get. And sometimes you get lucky, and sometimes you're like, well, if they're happy, then cool.
Yeah. No, I get it. It just shows dedication of just hunkering down and listening to the demos, the advanced copies, so that you really know what the end result's going to be. So you're doing things musically rather than just banging things out to a click.
And I also look at it this way. If I'm prepared, I'm saving everybody money. And when I went in to do the mission, and it would have been 2016 when we recorded it, they had 4 or 5 days to do drums, and I did everything in 2 days. And I was like, okay, well, let's move on to other things. And I figured, well, that's less, however much it costs to rent the big room at Blackbird, that's less money that someone has to spend. And I did my tracks. I'm happy. They're happy. Let's move on. And the same thing when I do sessions here. I don't know how to run my rig. If you offered me $1 million to record you a single snare drum hit right now, I couldn't do it, and it would be my loss. I've always employed an engineer because I want to concentrate on this, and I'm not a patient troubleshooter. And I see people that know how to run this stuff where all of a sudden, like, wait, why is this? I don't want that to be the next 4 hours of my afternoon. Why is this isn't working? I'm not very patient like that. I want to play the
Right.
tracks done. So if I'm prepared here, and if I charge a guy, $800 or $1,000 to do their track, I know that if I can play it in 1 or 2 takes and be happy and make them happy, then that's more money that I get to keep, and my engineering fee is down.
Yeah.
So that's what I just did a session Friday. I did the two pieces of music, and both of them we were done in 2 hours. I'm like, awesome.
One more question. When let's say you were going to go to Blackbird in Nashville, how important your gear is to you. Do you ship and cart your kit over there to play, or do you just use stuff that they have? Blackbird has so many drums.
Well, when we did the mission, Tommy had a Pearl kit in his studio that he got that was like a pro quality Pearl kit. It's not this. This is a friggin' Rolls Royce with a Lamborghini engine. And that's another thing. Like I wanted to do the record here because I have everything here. I got all the cymbals here, and I don't have to worry about that. But there's, I play Pearl drums. They're in Nashville. I was going to have them bring a kit to,
Blackbird.
sessions. And then Blackbirds, I got a lot of great snare drums there.
Yeah.
So it's getting great gear wouldn't have been an issue. But there's certain things like here, like if I wanted to use my father's old K ride cymbal, I'm not bringing that to Nashville. That's not leaving the house. But that's here if I wanted to use that just as a cymbal swell or something. There's certain colors of things that I have in this room that will never leave this room. They're only available here.
Well, thank you so much for coming on and sharing with us. We'd like to let you know that, of course, he's the drummer from STYX, but he's also doing a bunch of drum clinics. I don't know what COVID does to that. It probably doesn't help it very well, but
everything's in this format. I have some master classes online. I do some teaching online in the Zoom format.
I have seen some of your instructional videos, and even as a non-drummer, I've walked away saying, "Wow, this guy really can break down what he does and communicate it." So you're a great teacher. We didn't go into nearly enough of that. He's got a solo record out as well, so go check that out. What's the name of that solo record again?
Last Flight Home.
Last Flight Home. So go check that out. Is it on all the streaming services? Where can you get that record?
Yeah, I mean, if you want a signed CD or high resolution waves, you can go to toddsucherman.com, but it's on iTunes, and it's out there on all platforms. Some platforms more desirable than others.
And if you want to hire him or talk to him about about hiring him, getting to know him.
Doug, I'm here all the time.
If you want to speed date him.
Somebody talk to me.
You can go to his website, toddsucherman.com, which we'll put down in the links. We'll also put your YouTube channel. If you've got an Instagram page or Facebook page, we'll put all of that stuff down there, all of the ways to find you. But do yourself a favor. Go check out his videos first, and then get to know him. You've got to know him as a person today, but he's got this other half that's equal to this half that is just a phenomenal player. Find out if you enjoy the way he plays. Playing is such a personal thing. Maybe you like one style drumming over another, but if he resonates with you, find him out and do more with him.
And if you like this, buy it. And if you don't like it, buy it and give it to someone you don't like.
Brilliant marketer, too. There you have it. Well, thank you. Please share wherever you're listening to our podcast. Please go ahead and hit subscribe. And more than that, we don't put any money as of now into promoting this. We want this to be a grassroots podcast. We've been able to creep into the top 50 on iTunes, doing it just through totally organic means. But part of that is you playing or telling other people about this. Share it on your timelines and tell your friends about it. We want to keep on providing great interviews like this with monster players and just giving you a seat at the table that you don't otherwise have. So we want to thank Todd today for doing that with us. And we'll see you next time. Signing off from the West Barn. Over and out.